Hey everybody, welcome back to my humble channel where I humbly accept your constructive criticism, and I also would like to take a moment to denounce all of the criticism that has a lot to do with egocentric posturing. Like for an example, the other day I was able to visit an exhibit, and I went through the gift shop, and the gift shop had a lot of new things for sale. And in all of those new things, I had this idea that some of those new things inevitably will wind up becoming landfill items, just like almost everything else, including, for an example, instruments like the one that you see me playing right now. And also all of us will become quote unquote landfill material as well, with an increasing footprint, especially in today's era, where not only do you need a cap on top of your casket, but also there's also the basic embalming process and everything else, all the chemicals that we continue to follow that were put together by the old practices. And hopefully, as time goes by, we can recognize that just like when I suggested in the gift shop that instead of selling brand new items, we sell some gently used items, hopefully we can recognize that those are viable solutions to offset the footprints that we continue to leave as we take on these opportunities. So I try to restore instruments that I find that are damaged, that are given to me as damaged, and to bring them about to a playable condition to share with other people. And I think I do a pretty good job at that. And I also do a pretty good job at communicating from start to finish what it is that I'm talking about. In some cases, there's, let's call it hostility or even posturing by people that must be having a really bad day and must not feel so great about themselves because all they can do is continue to criticize people who they don't even know. And on this particular platform, when someone starts a brand new account specifically to tell me that my ideas are dumb or whatever, I think that it's basically just a little bit of shade that people are trying to throw, which actually helps, because the darker it is, the brighter any light that's shining through will shine through. And so today I just wanted to take a moment to address some of the peanut gallery who are ineffectively continuing their approach of bullying. And I'd like to let everybody know that it's safe to speak your insight. It's safe to speak your truth. And even if your voice shakes while you're speaking your truth to the people who are basically denouncing what you're saying, your perspective of truth is absolute. Now, that doesn't mean that your perspective can't be shifted a little bit here and there, or that someone else's perspective did not see something more relevant that might change your insight. But in order to have that insight get back through to where your perspective includes those elemental foundational pieces of knowledge, there has to be communication. And so a lot of people don't really have basic communication skills. They just throw a tantrum and destroy things, kill, steal, and destroy. And then they continue to pretend like as if they're helping to build anything worthwhile around them. A lot of people who have fake personas will live a certain lie pretty much until the point that they become embalmed and capped over in a cemetery. Now, as I talk about these things and recognize that the way that our fathers have practiced these situations is detrimental to our society, and as I suggest that maybe we need to start using used items in order to prevent the ultimate cataclysms that are continuing to develop around us, again, there's going to be people who chime in with useless information and try to get the conversation to deviate from what actually matters to basically things that don't matter. Those are people that I definitely want to avoid spending time with. And so as a practice, I generally give people a chance to have a worthwhile conversation with me. And when they continue to show that they're not able to communicate, well, this is a free platform, and I don't really get paid from it until basically people start clicking on the description and helping for that to occur, or until the channel breaks 1,000 subscribers, which if you're subscribing, thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. If you want to create a bunch of more fake accounts to subscribe to my channel so that we do get 1,000 subscribers, go ahead. You can cancel them all like one at a time. Once we hit 1,000, you can basically keep me at 999 subscriptions for basically as long as you want to, until there really are 999 plus subscribers who actually want to hear content that's relevant in terms of preparing for and adjusting for the future that is in many cases already the current for most of us. So I don't really accept anyone telling me that my conversation got discombobulated or was basically, for whatever reason, it was not cohesive, because all of everything that I've said has been pretty cohesive. And if you travel back through the journey of this channel, which started quite some time ago, you'll see that my objective was to talk with the topics of wildlife and nature. Wildlife and nature can help us look into conservation as something that is necessary, because oftentimes when we spend even just a little bit of time in nature, we see that some of our convenience, packaged, advertised solutions are not exactly in alignment with what's in our own well-being, with what's in our actual being. For our well-being, we want to make sure that we're able to share and to have enough to go around. And so for some of the people who were watching this channel while I went through my 40 days of fasting, there has been an uptick in terms of subscriptions and also inspirational feedback, and also feedback from people who were inspired themselves. And in the mix, there's always another entity that wants to kill, steal, and destroy, and basically try to throw some shade on the bright stars around them. The thing is, how do we deal with it? How do we return that energy? And for me, I'd like to just return the energy to all of you who are subscribing and actually giving comments that are relevant, even in different languages. In this era, I can put the different language into Google Translate and respond right back to you. So I'm able to have some great discussions about music and guitars and all sorts of other topics, including gardening, with many people globally. I hope that people just stop hiding under the, whatever illusion that they're using to pretend that they're someone who they're not, and begin to reveal their true colors. And even if those true colors are difficult to work with, hopefully we can paint a better palette that includes the insight of all of us, because no matter how negative or destructive someone is, once they become disciplined and once they become able to communicate in a group or even just with themselves when they have an internal thought going on, some of that dark thought energy, some of that dark passenger that some people basically carry with them until they have that cap put on their coffin, some of that is energy that can be turned into fuel to help to fuel something that's beneficial. Just as an example, yesterday I ran a half marathon, just over a half marathon, and I believe that I wouldn't be able to do that without the fuel that I've had from from my supporters, from people who have contributed positively towards that achievement. And at the same time, the people with the negative insight, people who said that I wouldn't make it, that I would basically continue to fail over and over, are people that I basically passed up by the first lap of my 13 miles of laps. That's a half marathon. Half marathon is something that I'm doing now just basically for grins on occasion. And I'm trying to work on my pace. That way I can make sure that I can actually complete a marathon in the given amount of time. And those are the kind of things that I'm doing that I was not able to do just a couple of years ago. And so after the fasting process, as my blood pressure came down, as my weight came down, my knees improved, my pace improved, my stamina improved, and I began to approach strength training in the same way. You might notice that the arrangement around me has changed a little bit. It's kind of got a lot more shape to it. It looks a little bit more cohesive. It looks a lot less discombobulated. And most people who are pointing out the discombobulation and the lack of cohesiveness, that's what they see in the mirror. And that's why they want to point it out. When I point out the lack of discipline, it's because I've seen the lack of discipline in the mirror. And I, in many ways, continue to see it all around us, especially when we look just off trail, sometimes right down the center of the trail. And as I'm walking with all of the responsible adults who are paying all their dues to be in the same places where I'm at, I start to wonder, why am I dropping less trash along the way? Well, in many cases, I don't buy the trash. I don't buy into the trash. I don't subscribe to the trash to begin with. So I might show it as something that is something worth observing and taking care of, and hence taking out of the equation, like maybe by wearing things that were used before, handling items that were handled before, and not being grossed out about it, and not claiming that some people need to know their market, and never suggest those type of items for being introduced into our consumer stream. So other people, on the other hand, will see these as possible solutions, will recognize that it's really just our fathers who are the capstone on the graves that we're digging. And our fathers really, they shouldn't have the power to continue to push us in directions that are not beneficial, even for their own grandchildren. So for the lineage that we're talking about here, when we talk about generational divides, I'd like to go so far as to say the math isn't all that complicated when it comes to generational divides. All you have to do is add conversation, and then you have the whole picture. Once you have the whole picture, you're not as confused. So for those of you who have been watching these videos and who have felt a little bit like, I don't know what this guy's talking about. One, I'd like to recommend maybe start out not eating breakfast. Go without food for a while. Wait until you're really good and hungry, and then wait hours past that. And then finally, when you're not hungry anymore, take a good assessment of what it is that brought you comfort today. And hopefully some of what brought you comfort was being able to have an actual conversation with someone when maybe you're not being able to have conversations with people in general. Maybe that first conversation you had was a good training ground. Maybe now you can go back to your own parents who you have had trouble talking with and just at least voice what it is. If you can voice what you got in your heart calmly to the people that you've had trouble communicating with. I've had trouble communicating with my own father. So I tell that story on this channel quite frequently. And if you have trouble communicating with segments that respond just like a person who you've had dire difficulties communicating with, like my father, he's very similar to many other aged, let's say men, and also women. And in that case, in that regard, what I mean is at a certain point when people are on either fixed incomes or fixed mentalities, they don't necessarily think outside the box anymore. They don't necessarily want to go out for a walk because, well, it's too hot today. Might be too cold tomorrow. Might be too rainy the next day. It might be too cloudy the other day. But all of those things are things that are self-defeating thoughts. If you basically do things with the genuine appreciation that a child would do things with, then you would succeed no matter what. Throughout even the minimum intrusions on the circumstances, you would succeed. Like if you got a blister on your first mile, well, maybe it's not a good day to do a marathon, but at least you got your first mile in. And that even sounded like at least you got your first smile in. So smile and also appreciate what you're doing. Give praise and thanks whenever you can do that. And if you've forgotten how to do those things, definitely when someone mentions it to you that all you're doing is making them feel bad all the time or attempting to make them feel bad, take that insight into consideration and recognize when it's your responsibility to further the conversation in a more effective way. And if you're basically dropping the ball by not doing anything further, well, you're basically a part of a problem that I personally don't vote for. And since I don't vote for it, I definitely am not going to put my time into it aside from to just show the story. When I show the story and how it all ties back to itself, there is basically one entity that's here to kill, steal, and destroy. It's a legion of entities, actually. And then there's the opposite. The opposite wants things to succeed, wants life to flourish, and also tends to the garden so that when there's an abundance of things that are bad for the garden, well, we find ways to at least assess the situation and try to lean into a different direction in different ways. All those things can become clear when you're thinking about things with positivity and in favor of peace and love and things like that. So what is it that I've done that was discombobulated or not cohesive recently? Well, probably everything from the person who basically has a structured day where this is what I do today, this is what I do tomorrow. I have to have coffee before I go and do anything. That's addiction. For all of the addicts out there, I probably do cause anxiety to you because I'm not an addict. And I'm basically proud to say that you also don't need to be an addict. And since you want to not have a conversation with me, the only thing I can assume is you're just like my father, who is currently struggling with addiction. So if anyone out there would like to share some prayer with me, let's start with praying for reasonable rainfall for one another so that we stop getting doused on one state with hurricanes and we stop getting parched in another state with droughts. And maybe we can share a little bit back and forth. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but let's also try to think about praying for the people who are having difficulty getting over that stronghold where they have to hold on to all that wealth. And they have so much wealth that they can just be grossed out about the simple concept of wearing something that's been worn before. For me, I remember wearing my cousin's shirt that he gave to me, that was given to me because basically he was older than me. I was younger. Some of the clothes got passed around in our families. My cousin was a hero to me back in those days. He's still an amazing character to me. So is his mother. So, well, I can't say a lot about the father because basically, like many of our fathers, they've gone silent. And the only time they speak out is basically to critique, and it's not in a simple way. Usually it's in a way to make someone feel less than. And when you try to make people feel less than as a father, well, that's kind of detrimental to the family nucleus and structure, I would say. Some of you might agree, some of you might disagree. Whatever the case, from my personal experience, I hope that you have a beautiful family and that if you have your own kids, that you're an amazing parent. And I'm sure you are, because if you're watching this and paying attention, well, you've got a good head on your shoulders. If you're watching this just to chime in and try to figure out how to say it's disjointed or disconnected, well, that's a whole other story. But I guarantee you that if you feel that way, you're not the only one that I'm addressing in this video. And so if you feel like this is a conversation between you and I, well, it's possible that it could be, but the likelihood is that I'm talking directly at my father, hoping that he'll respond back to me so that we can have a cohesive non-discombobulated conversation together. And in order for that to happen, if he could focus by maybe either not eating the things that are causing mental confusion, maybe by not taking the prescriptions that are masking the illness, masking the side effect of the illness, maybe he could have an increase in mental acuity by going out into nature and seeing some of the things that actually cause you to hold your breath and pause for a while because you're so in wonder. That's what happened when I got to see the Northern Lights. That's what happened when I got to have an encounter with a bear face to face. That's what happened when I got to walk with the bobcat. And that's what happened when I got to see the bats emerging out of the cave. That's also what happened, but on a different side of the energy spectrum, when I saw all of the rubbish, all of the litter in the river or at the lake that I just ran my half marathon around. Some of the things that bring us feelings are the things that we're supposed to be working on. So if you feel sad for me, if you feel bad that I basically don't have everything that I could possibly have to accomplish the things that I'm accomplishing, well, I think that the only tool that I'm missing is the one that corresponds with the wealth that I'm definitely regrowing. So if you want to contribute to the I guess the worldly representation of wealth, don't forget, I've got a link in the description where you can help me out. You don't have to. I'm just suggesting that there are opportunities for you to do things other than just throw shade, you know? But anyway, on a different note, I just wanted to say thanks again for subscribing. This channel continues to grow. Thanks again for commenting. Even if your comments don't really mean anything to anyone except for yourself, the fact is that that causes the algorithm to sway viewership in a certain direction. And that helps to share the word, share the good news. So I hope that all of that makes sense to you. Again, I know it does. Just trying to be a little bit less specific so that I don't antagonize even more people. And at the same time, if you're that angry and you need someone to try and possibly share that anxiety with, tell me what you're anxious about. We'll go from there. If you want to just critique me, well, I think that your anxiety is about you. That's all I can see. And I only can see it from former experience with similar circumstances when I myself was in the worst health of my life. So thanks again for tuning in and for wishing everyone the best version of themselves by also taking the necessary steps to present the best version of our own selves. So it's a system, you know, reciprocal. Reciprocal means helping one another even without expecting something in return. Thanks so much for helping this channel to continue to grow and for watching the journey with me and for helping me to progress to the levels that I've progressed to. I wouldn't be able to do it without you, especially without your constructive criticism. Until next time, peace, love, and all that old school stuff.